On today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to shift from the 3D through the 4D to the 5D dimensions, and how knowing all of these dimensions will literally shift your perspective and it will change your life. Welcome back to another video on the Love of Wisdom. I'm Brittany Fontanez, and what I do, I assist people to awakening their power to find the infinite love within themselves. It's a cool day out this morning and I'm really enjoying it. But today, like I said, today's video is about switching how to shift from 3D through 4D to 5D dimensions, and how it's important to really deliberately understand these and how they could literally change your perspective for you to change your life. Now, let's start off with 3D. Well, let's start off in general. As we're going through a spiritual awakening, we start to realize how things just seem different. Nothing seems the same. The way that we used to see life, the way that we used to act, the way that we allow our being to be has completely feel like it's crumbled. And in that feeling of everything feeling like it's crashing down, you start to feel like you're losing your identity. You start feeling like, everything has just shifted. Like, what is new now? What's this difference? You really start to go into a state of confusion. But this is what happens when you go through a spiritual awakening. You start to realize the first dimension that you have been in is a state of duality. And duality is the state of the third dimension, the material world of fear. That's just the truth. I speak the truth, nothing but the truth, so it can set you free. But this dimension, the 3D, is all about materialistic possession. It's all about just living in the physical world and living in a state of fear and control. And with that essence, we only see from a state of what's good, what's bad, light and darkness, a state of polarity. And polarity keeps us in that state of duality. And duality is just being dull. It's just seeing two perspectives and not having any balance within those perspectives. And living in this way can really put you in a mindset where you think you don't have control, where you think you just need to listen to outside forces because internal forces are not really what have we been taught. So we just live in a state of worry, of fear, of hatred, of not really making up our minds what feels right for us to live a more balanced, soulful life, you would like to put it. And not only that, will you learn from this, that you can learn a lot from the 3D reality, because it shows you of how much people do not think they have control over their own lives, and how much fear really dictates who they are and who they want to become. And in that state of dictation, we literally only allow fear, and fear is just a low, dense vibration. We're literally living in the low frequencies of this universe. And those low frequencies go from a state of, like I just said, fear-based, worry, depression, sadness, anger, and all of these put together just puts us in scarcity. Like, if you've ever heard that word scarcity, it's literally like people just living in a state of fear. This is what majority of society lives in. This is what I lived in for so long. And now learning about all these, learning about spirituality, going through my spiritual awakening, I'm starting to realize that there's no such thing as fear. It's only a man-made perspective that we put on ourselves, and that is a form of limitation. And that's how beliefs are formed. Beliefs are formed from self-limiting thinking, self-limiting perspectives, you would like to put it. But how do you shift from 3D through 4D? Now, you shift from this level. It's the same thing as when you're starting your spiritual awakening. Things start to feel like they're crumbling. But here's the thing, you start to feel like there's more to this. You start to feel like there's more dimensions, there's more universes, more you know what I'm trying to say. There's more different worlds than the physical world. And that's when you start to shift into the fourth dimension, which is the dream world. Now, I like to call this dimension the gap between the third dimension, the darkness, and the gap between the fifth dimension, which is light, which is going to be the last dimension that I share with you. And this is just the gray part. You got the dark, you got the light, and you just got the gray part. This is the gap. I call the fourth dimension the gap, is because when you're going through a state of switching back and forth, you're still in a little bit of the duality foundation, but you're awakening to the spiritual world, and you're connecting more to your angels, you're connecting more to your guides, you're becoming more telepathic. And when you are open into that state of fourth dimension, you really start to be in that dream state. You really start to astral project. You really start to be aware of your dreams. And mostly, I'll leave a link up in the video of my last video of the 7 subtle bodies, which teaches you all the different bodies, especially astral projection and the astral plane and your energetic field. But as I continue this, that dream world is really a state where you start to connect more into the higher realms. You start to understand more about who you truly are, where you truly come from, and you start to remember all these things that you have forgotten. And understand this: our spiritual beings chose when we were going to come into this life, and chose when we're going to leave, and chose our hardships, and chose our achievements. So this is when we start to awaken to more of the true aspect of what we truly are. Now, how do you shift from 4D to 5D? Well, when you shift from 4D, it's literally going through, you're cycling through, you're cleansing out, you're going through all your karmatic cycles, but you're literally purging all the things that don't serve you anymore. And then you start to realize, I'm not afraid anymore to be who I truly want to be. And that's you living in your authentic state of mind. And when you start to realize your individuality, but your connection to life, you start to make your decisions and your choices deliberately. And this is how when I awakened and shift to the 4D, I started to choose my decisions deliberately. I started to awaken to the fact that I choose the light, and I only want the light because I am light itself. And that's how I shift from the 4D to the 5D, is when I realized I am not alone, I am whole, and I am part of this unity consciousness. And that's how you shift to the 5D, which is the fifth dimension, the last dimension that I'm going to share with you. The fifth dimension is the pathway to light, to unconditional love. In this dimension, you start to realize worry doesn't exist anymore. Fear doesn't exist anymore. Separation doesn't exist anymore. Duality doesn't exist anymore. The only thing that exists is understanding that you're part of the whole, but you embrace your individuality, and you embrace your authenticity that you have to share with this unity of consciousness. And what the beautiful thing about the high dimension, the fifth dimension, is that you start to become more open to life. You start to become, what's that word? It's gonna come to me. I don't really know how to put that word together, but you start to realize that you start to shift energetically. You start to become that masculine and feminine energy start to balance into one. And here's a beautiful thing I didn't even mention either. In the third dimension, a lot of people have so intense sexual desire. And the reason why we have such intense sexual desires in the 3D dimension is because we want to feel the connection of the masculine and feminine energy in one. We want to feel that wholeness, that pureness that is divinity. That's why we seek so much sexually, because we want connection, and that's how we just end up feeling our voids. But when you're in the fifth dimension, you start to realize you're in that state of balance. You're in harmony. Both the masculine and feminine energy are together. And you start to realize people who live in the fifth dimension, which is just a high state of vibration, which it's impossible to go back to the low state of dimensions and to low vibrations anymore. It's very impossible. But when they're in this high state of vibration, you start to realize that they're not fully feminine and they're not fully masculine, but they're both in between. As for example, I'm a woman, but I look a little bit masculine. It's because I just vibrate from a high state of consciousness. And when you are in this fifth dimension, you start to realize there's no such thing as separation anymore. You realize you are one with source, you are one with light, you are one with everything. But the only way you can shift into the fifth dimension completely is by healing all the bodies, your astral body, your mental body, your physical body. Like I said, I'll leave this link in the not in the description, up in the top of the video, to go back to my previous video, the 7 subsoul bodies that teach you all the other bodies in your energetic field. But when you heal all these aspects of these bodies in your energetic field, that's when your higher self tries to emerge into your energetic field. It starts to emerge into your body, and then it'll go in and out because it's trying to clear and heal and purge out all the energies that don't serve you anymore, so you can become fully cleared out, so your higher self can take full aspect of your physical self, and then it starts to be your guide. You start to realize in the fifth dimension, you don't channel anymore. You don't channel with your guides, you don't channel with your angels. If anything, it just becomes very intuitive. It starts to become one with you. It starts to be very resonant with who you are. And therefore, your guides are you. Your angels are you. Everything that you ever needed, all the answers are within you. And you start to really create your reality because your higher self has merged with you completely and permanently. And therefore, it has taken full control. And that's when you're in the 5D, you start to manifest instantly. You start to manifest everything you ask for. Everything just seems so simple and so easy. It's so resonant with you. But you come from a state of unconditional love, and you do things with purpose. You do things with light. You do things with purity. And I'm not saying you're a saint or a sinner, but I am saying is that you make a deliberate decision when you come into this state of consciousness, especially from spiritual awakening, because you start to realize you're more than what you've been told. And you start to realize you feel there's more than what you could perceive with your 2 eyes. And that's the fifth dimension. It's just pure unconditional love. And that's why when you're in this fifth dimensional state, this plane, you start to really just feel enlightened. You feel more light, you feel more whole, you feel more complete. Like you don't need someone by your side. You don't need these physical things. You start to understand that you came onto this earth with nothing. You're going to leave this earth with nothing. So you might as well feel whole and complete now, because you have divinity within you. You have the light within you. You have all the pathways and the guidance and everything within you, and you're connected and whole with that. And you're the link to the unlimited abundance of the universe. And then that's when you realize you create your own heaven on earth. And that's the beautiful part. You start to see life so beautifully. You start to see things, the good in everyone. You're not naive. You have your spiritual boundaries. And understand this, actually, when you're in the fourth dimension, within that gap, you have to create spiritual boundaries. Because there's no rules, there's no restrictions. You're not in the human state anymore. You're literally bouncing back and forth. So you got to create some spiritual boundaries. You have to understand, you have to work with yourself energetically, and you have to work with yourself physically. So when you're in the fifth dimensional state, you do see everything beautifully. You don't judge it anymore. You don't have hatred. You don't have fear. You don't have any of these low vibrations anymore. But you're so one with yourself that nothing can trigger you and nothing can affect you, because you know who you truly are in this dimension. So that is all the dimensions I wanted to share with you. That is the topic for today. That is it for today's video. If you really enjoyed everything I have teach you, there will be a link in the description on an article about more in depth about these dimensions and how they can help you shift your perspective into changing your life and to finding your light and your love that you truly are. But until then, you guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe to my channel, as well as hit that notification button for daily videos, and follow me on Instagram for more uplifting content. Until then, I'll see you on the next one. Stay blissful, remain authentic.